Hello and welcome back to Silver Age Silver Screen, the show where we do, like, the nerd movies. We watch them. I have this written down, but I'm not looking at it. The podcast where we watch, discuss, and review sci-fi, cult, superhero, and other stereotypically geeky films. I'm your co-host, Casey Jarms.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
Yeah, and last week we ended on a cliffhanger, and I said we're going to be watching my favorite Spider-Man movie. But which one is that? It is not what people expected, I assume. Live-action Spider-Man, by the way. Spider-Verse is such a masterpiece.
Yeah, I recently rewatched it, over last week. So good. It's so good.
What surprises me is that was made by Sony Pictures Animation. They also made the Emoji Movie. How do the same people make those two films?
Two names. Phil Lord, Chris Miller.
Yeah, they make good stuff.
Really do. Except Disney doesn't think so. Get their ass fired from Solo.
Yeah, that film was honestly probably the least remarkable Star Wars movie. Anyway, we immediately got off track. Amazing Spider-Man! It's the reboot of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. Came out 5 years after Spider-Man 3, because Spider-Man 3 was very controversial. And also, Sam Raimi didn't want to direct the fourth one because of the problems with the script. But yeah, this one. I would say this is probably the most debated quality Spider-Man movie. It's either really, really good or the worst second worst Spider-Man movie ever, according to fans.
Yeah, I mean, this movie came out pretty soon after, way too soon after the previous series. But again, that's not necessarily a mark on quality of the film itself. I'm just saying, Sam Raimi wanted to make Spider-Man 4, and it was going to be released in 2011. This film came out a year after. A whole new franchise reboot came out a year after the fourth installment of the previous one was going to come out. And the reason why Sam Raimi left was because, yes, he wasn't totally proud of how the development was going, as well as the fact that the studio and producers were just, with or without his permission, going ahead with a reboot. For this film, they hired filmmaker Mark Webb, and they cast Andrew Garfield, fresh off The Social Network, to play Peter Parker's Spider-Man. Along with him, we got Emma Stone as love interest Gwen Stacy, Martin Sheen and Sally Fields as Uncle Ben and Aunt May, and then we also got comedian Dennis Leary as Captain Stacy.
He is the funniest character in this film.
Because he's played by a professional comedian.
He just gut-bustingly laugh.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Gut-bustingly funny.
Yeah.
Also, before we get into this, I really like this film's title. Most Marvel comic books have, an adjective. It isn't Iron Man, it's the Invincible Iron Man, the Mighty Thor, the Incredible Hulk, the Spectacular Spider-Man. And what should we call our reboot? How about we go with Amazing Spider-Man? Oh, that way people will think this film is amazing.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
The film opens up with a young Peter Parker playing hide-and-seek with his parents. He's looking around the house for his parents when he walks into his dad's office. The window is open and the room is trashed. He calls for his dad. His dad, Richard Parker, runs into the room to find that someone has broken into his office and attempted to steal some files. In response to this, Peter's parents pack all of his stuff, move Peter into his aunt and uncle's house while they go away for a while. Peter is left in the care of his aunt and uncle for the next 10 years. Cut to high school.
Yeah, that's a way to open a Spider-Man movie. You know, when I watched the Sam Raimi movies, it was on top of my mind. Man, what's the deal with Peter Parker living with, his aunt and uncle? Because that's, the pressing question that everyone had, and it's what these films decided to make the big overarching plot line.
Do you want to know what was my pressing concern of Spider-Man?
What?
How sexy was Aunt May when she was a secret spy for S.H.I.E.L.D. 30 years ago?
Oh, God, yeah. Mark Webb didn't come up with the deep, mysterious espionage backstory for Richard and whoever Parker, but the comics don't focus on it because who really gives a shit? It's not really that important to Spider-Man. I don't care why he lives with Uncle Ben, because the whole point of the story, or at least Uncle Ben's role in it, is that he's his father figure and he dies. But whatever. I don't like how this film starts.
The reason...
And again, I like this film.
Yeah, the reason why I bring up Aunt May being a sexy secret agent is because the film's sequel set up a bunch of spin-offs and sequels and tie-ins. One of them was about Aunt May being a S.H.I.E.L.D. secret agent.
They did not.
Yes, they did.
Please tell me you're lying.
I am not fucking lying. A couple years ago, like around 2014, 2015, a Sony executive had their emails hacked into.
Right, because they pissed off the North Korean government with that one really shitty Seth Rogen movie.
But along with that came out a lot of details about the future of that Spider-Man franchise. One of them was a prequel about Aunt May being a secret agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. It is such a stupid idea that even Sally Fields, who plays Aunt May in this movie, said, that is the dumbest fucking thing I have ever heard.
Yeah, that's so ridiculous. That's so ridiculous that I hate the fact that that basically exists, because they're making, like, an Alfred Pennyworth backstory TV show for some reason. Yeah. I mean, Sony may be terribly run and just incompetent, but at least Warner Brothers is making them look smart. But anyway, cut to Peter as a teenager. He's in high school, and he's nerd-ish. Like, he isn't the classic Spider-Man, like, big old glasses. I like science and reading and stuff. You know, that was actually a big point of contention when this movie came out, how nerdy Andrew Garfield is, because he isn't the traditional nerd, and I'm curious about your thoughts on it.
So, to be perfectly honest with you, when I first saw this movie, because I saw it in theaters all those years ago.
Wow.
And I've seen it multiple times since. Upon rewatching this movie for this episode, I am really not a fan of this movie at all. Like, there's just so much wrong with it, and we're obviously going to get into it a bit more. One of the things, to answer your question, Casey, I think Andrew Garfield is completely wasted in this film. Before and after the Spider-Man movies, he was doing incredible work with award-winning, critically acclaimed filmmakers. Like, he was in the Academy Award-nominated The Social Network. He was working with Martin Scorsese on Silence and Mel Gibson with Hacksaw Ridge. He is a fantastic actor. And then in this movie, he plays a terribly characterized Peter Parker. He seems to me, I don't believe him as an awkward teenager who's being bullied. I feel like he's a guy trying to be awkward, trying to act young. He looks like he has a hangover throughout this entire movie. Like, he's trying to play a younger version of himself, and it just doesn't work. And again, Peter Parker is terribly characterized in this. Because Peter Parker is supposed to be, like, really awkward, nerdy, completely uncool. But in this movie, he's, like, kind of a punk, kind of a douchebag, actually. Like, he's skateboarding in the halls. After his teachers tell him not to, he's standing up to the bullies and being a piece of shit to them, embarrassing them, humiliating them. Almost all the characters in this movie are terribly characterized, and half of them don't have very good development. And we'll get into that more later. But to answer your question, I think Andrew Garfield is an incredibly talented actor, and he's completely wasted in this completely mischaracterized adaptation of Spider-Man.
Oh god, this is gonna be a repeat of the Death Note episode, isn't it?
No, not necessarily.
Oh god, it is. Oh god, and even you talking about Peter Parker's characterization, that is Light Turner's characterization. Oh boy. I'm gonna have to fight tooth and nail to explain why I like this film.
Then absolutely, I will listen.
Well, we've gone off to a good start. We are going into the plot of this film just so optimistic.
Yeah.
You've already given your thesis.
Oh yeah.
I don't actually dislike Andrew Garfield in this. I'll get to it later when we get to some of the more meaty scenes with him. But like at the start of the film, I don't really mind him not being a traditional nerd as much. I kind of prefer comic accuracy, but I don't think it's a big deal. Him being just this photographer kind of popular kid, it's fine. But yeah, film starts out, he sees kid getting bullied. He steps in, gets decked. We're introduced to Gwen Stacy, who Peter has a crush on, and also she's smart girl and he's smart girl. Peter goes home to his aunt and uncle, May and Ben. I do think they're very well cast. I like Aunt May and Uncle Ben in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I mentioned earlier on my quote-unquote thesis, I think really Martin Sheen and Sally Fields as Aunt May and Uncle Ben, they do a very good job. Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben is arguably the best character in this movie. He's very honest, hardworking. He just wants to do right by Peter, and he wants Peter to do right by the world. And you do feel that relationship they have with each other. They do a very good job at that. However, Aunt May really does nothing in this movie, and she's not in it that much. So she's as a character is wasted.
Which is a shame, because Sally Fields is a really good actor.
Yes, she's a great actor. So is Emma Stone. Unfortunately, Gwen Stacy has no character development in this movie whatsoever.
I'm gonna push against that later in this review, but whatever. Anyway, Peter goes home and he discovers his father's briefcase and it has papers in it. And Peter starts questing to discover the mystery about his parents, which I don't care. No. Whatever. I don't. And it doesn't go anywhere is the thing.
So, upon further researching of his father's satchel, he finds a photo of his dad with an unnamed scientist. He does some research and finds that his parents died in a plane crash many years earlier. When Uncle Ben comes into his room and tells him that the man in the photo with his father is a man by the name of Curtis Connors, who's a lead scientist at Oscorp. And along with the stuff in Peter's father's satchel, he finds a lot of stuff belonging to Oscorp. Stuff like equations and stuff like that.
Also, just slight interjection. Spider-Man uses Bing. When he's like Googling, trying to figure out who Kirk Connors is, he uses Bing. He uses Bing multiple times throughout this movie.
He uses Bing 3 times in 3 separate montages.
I don't really have any thoughts on that other than, really?
Yeah.
Peter Parker is not a Bing man. No one is a Bing man. Not even Microsoft employees are Bing men.
Peter researches Dr. Connors, and he goes to Oscorp, where he sneaks in under the guise of getting an internship, where he sees Gwen Stacy working there as the apprentice to Dr. Connors. She sees him, this guy who she recognizes, who's wearing a name tag that's not his own, and basically tells him to not get in trouble, just lay low. She knows he's up to something.
Also, yeah, like, you glossed over that, but Spider-Man gets into the Oscorp, like, science lab by pretending to be a dude there on an internship and stealing the dude's badge, which, first off, terrible security, Oscorp. Secondly, okay, dick move, Peter. You watch that man get drug out by security. Like, dick move, Peter.
Gwen takes them into the lab where all the scientists are performing
science,
revolutionary scientific experiments, and in walks Kurt Connors, who the second you get on screen, you already know he's a deranged. He's gonna be the villain, essentially. You immediately know just by the way he talks, like, yep, this guy's deranged, this guy's gonna be the villain. When we meet Dr. Connors, we find out that he is researching cross-species genetics, researching lizard DNA to regenerate lost limbs, because you see, Dr. Connors lost an arm many years ago, and he's been looking for a way to regrow his arm back, and the way he's doing that is through cross-species genetics with lizards. While there, Peter breaks into the lab after bumping into a character played by Irfan Khan, who is another character that is played by a fantastic actor. Irfan Khan, He was also in Jurassic World. He's a big actor in Indian films, but he's another character that I guess I'll get into a bit more later, but they wasted the actor's talent. Irfan Khan, rest in peace. They totally wasted this guy in this movie. But yeah, he breaks into a top secret lab just by watching the guy punch in the security code. He gets into the lab where he finds the webbing string that he will eventually use to create the web shooters. He gets into a room with radioactive spiders, accidentally triggers the machine. All the spiders come falling onto his head, where he gets bitten by one, and he leaves Oscorp having been bitten by the radioactive spider.
On the train ride home, he starts having weird powers appear. He's really strong and agile now, and his hand keeps sticking to stuff, and he accidentally knocks out like 3 dudes on the subway. And he gets home, he eats a shitload of food, because, let's be honest, you'd be hungry if you became Spider-Man.
Oh, of course.
Dude burns so many calories.
The next several scenes are Peter dealing with the fact that he has new powers. He's got enhanced strength, agility, spider sense, all that. I'm really not a fan of how they developed Peter Parker, especially not at this stage in the film. They jump around in tone a lot in how he's dealing with it. Like, he's in the subway, and the effects of him getting the powers is, like, immediate. Like, it's so sudden that he gets these powers. It's the beginning of the next scene after he's bitten that he starts developing powers, and it's like this it's a comedic scene, and then when he gets home, he eats all that food, and it's this weird, drawn out, awkward comedic scene that is really bizarre and weird. And then he's like freaking out for 10 seconds, and then he does another Bing montage. And even later into the film, he doesn't really struggle with his powers. It's just he gets bitten, and then the very next scene, he has all these abilities, and now he knows how to beat a bunch of people up, and he knows how to use them.
Well, I mean, he does accidentally mess up with his powers at first. He, like, wrecks his bathroom and accidentally beats some people up and breaks his computer because the keys, like, stick to his fingers.
Yeah, but it's very rushed and jumps around tonally a lot when doing so. After those, like, maybe a scene or two, he doesn't exactly struggle with his abilities. He's just sort of like, oh, I have these now, and now I know how to be Spider-Man automatically.
I guess. I mean, I disagree on this. Like, it's not just sudden. Like, they do have, like, a really nice short little scene of him just messing around with his powers in, like, a random warehouse and, like, being agile and swinging on chains that I really liked. It was a short little scene that I liked.
Oh, that scene that was basically a soft rock music video?
Yeah.
Well, again, he doesn't exactly struggle with it. He's learning, but he doesn't struggle with it.
I don't know what you mean.
This isn't something that he's, like, having a hard time with. He's just finds out, oh yeah, I have these powers and I know how to use them. There's no struggle there. He just has these powers now, and he's like, this is cool.
Okie doke. Back to the plot. Mm-hmm. Peter meets with Dr. Connors, reveals that he's the son of Richard Parker, the tiger from The Life of Pi, and gives Dr. Connors his father's hidden research that Connors can then use to fix up his experiments on regrowing limbs. Hope nothing bad comes with that.
Nope.
Peter also gets into a fight with Flash Thompson, the local high school bully, smashes a backboard because... And it isn't just this film, it's Spider-Man in general. Spider-Man sucks at hiding his secret identity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Stop doing superpower stuff at school. It happens in like every Spider-Man movie.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed in this movie in particular, it's like as the movie goes on, more and more the school will assume that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. In this scene, he's like using super agility and like his sticky powers to like mess with him, and then he jumps from half court and breaks the backboard. And it's like everyone in that gymnasium will know that, oh, this guy's probably Spider-Man. Then later
Yeah.
on in the movie, he throws a football at the field goal and he dents it. Or not only dents it, he bends the field, the metal. Now every single person on that football field will know he's Spider-Man.
Okay, two things. First off, that's not how footballs work. That football would have popped.
Yeah.
Also, the scene where he humiliates Flash, there's a girl just painting a sign on the middle of a basketball court during practice. Yeah, it's mean that Flash spilled her paint, but she had that coming. Yeah. And finally, who do you think is worse at hiding their secret identity? Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland?
I don't know. I'd have to really think about that, but I'm going to go Andrew Garfield right now. Because later on, when the lizard attacks the school, the entire school has been talking about oh, hey, Peter Parker, he's been doing all this crazy, weird superhero-like stuff. And now suddenly, this giant lizard that's been attacking the city attacks this school, and conveniently, no one saw Peter Parker outside the school running away from it. He's probably the one in Spider-Man.
It's a big school.
I know, but word gets around. Even in a big school. Point is, as the movie goes on, more and more the school will progressively know that he's Spider-Man.
Peter gets in trouble at school. Uncle Ben has to trade a shift. He tells Peter to walk May home at night. Peter instead hangs out with Dr. Connors, and Dr. Connors finally gets a mouse to regrow a missing limb. Good! Science! Nothing wrong will happen from this. But anyway, Peter goes home and Uncle Ben's mad at him and they get into a fight. Peter storms out. Uncle Ben goes after him. Peter goes to a convenience store to buy some food, but he's 2 cents short and the cashier is a dick to him and won't let him take from the penny jar because he's the weirdest cashier ever. The cashier in that scene, I've worked retail jobs. I could not be bothered to yell at someone for taking a penny from a take-a-penny jar. What is that dude's problem?
Yeah, I mean, before there's a few things I wanted to mention. When Peter's hanging out with Dr. Connors, they have this obligatory scene where they marvel at this new technological machine that can be used to dispense disease all throughout the city. They talk for quite a long time about this machine, and it's never going to play a part in the movie ever again. No, there's no foreshadowing whatsoever.
Yeah, it's obvious, very obvious, kind of clumsy foreshadowing. Also, who built this machine? I'm pretty sure they said it was Richard Parker. But why? Why would you make this thing? It's a war crimes machine. You put a small vial in and it cloaks all of New York City in a gas. This can only be used for war crimes. What the shit, Richard Parker? Or whoever made this machine.
Yeah.
And why didn't you break it? I swear this is a good film, or at least I like it. And I know that the first third of it is actually kind of really shitty. I will admit that. I still like it.
I do think that, to go off that point, I do agree. I think the first half of this movie, or maybe even more than the first half, is just going through the motions. Because they're trying to tell the origin story of Spider-Man, but that was already told a couple years earlier in the previous franchise. So they're trying to do something different, and it just comes across rather bland. That sums up my entire feelings of this movie, is it's not terrible. It's just the epitome of mediocre and bland. When, for example, before Peter storms out of the house, when Uncle Ben gives him the "with great power comes great responsibility" speech, it comes across so tired and so overdrawn because they're trying to do something different, but they're trying to get the same point across. And he doesn't say "with great power comes great responsibility," but he basically implies that, and it just comes across so tired and poorly written.
I swear to God, I like this movie. We said first, third, maybe even half of this film is actually really bad. The point where the film actually becomes kind of good is when Uncle Ben dies. Mm-hmm. I really like Uncle Ben's death in this. We got sidetracked while we were on it, but at the convenience store, a guy robs it, and Peter doesn't stop him because, screw it, the cashier is a dick who's really anal about his job for some reason. That is the most confusing thing in this movie. Why does he care? But yeah, Peter lets the thief get away because whatever, it's only a few bucks. Cashier's a dick. He's angry. He's a teenager. And as this thief runs out, people are like screaming, and he runs into Uncle Ben and pulls a gun. Or, well, he trips and drops the gun and then reaches for it, and Uncle Ben tries to disarm him because Uncle Ben is kind of dumb in that scene, but whatever.
Yeah.
And he shoots Uncle Ben, and Uncle Ben dies. And, you said that Andrew Garfield is a really good actor. He does do a really good job acting when Uncle Ben dies.
He does. That is a very effective scene. And like I said, the film did do a good job up until that point of fleshing out Uncle Ben's character and his relationship with Peter and May. And they established that he is genuinely a good guy. And when he dies, you feel that, especially with Peter's reaction to it. He does. It is, for me personally, made a little ridiculous by the fact that all of this was started because Peter bought milk.
Yeah, but I kind of like the pettiness of it. Like, basically, Uncle Ben dies over 2 cents. That's something, I don't know who. It was a critic I read that was positive of this film who agreed with a lot of points. I like the just pettiness that causes Uncle Ben's death. And, like, you gotta be a good person always, even when it's minor. And overall, this is not how Uncle Ben dies in the comics and in the Tobey Maguire film. It is this weird, overcomplicated thing with Peter becoming a pro wrestler and the dude running out with all the pro wrestling money and trying to steal Uncle Ben's car. This is a much more grounded, simplified version that doesn't feel that similar to the Tobey Maguire film, but still gets the same core emotion across very effectively. It's a really good scene. This film has like 3 of the best scenes in any Spider-Man movie. And those are enough for me to like them. And this is the first one. And if the rest of the film was like that, like not just retreading the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, doing something different while still keeping the core themes and using Andrew Garfield effectively, this film would be a masterpiece.
Cut to Peter and Aunt May are dealing with Uncle Ben's death. That was another very effective scene. And then from then on, Peter starts a sort of revenge plot to find the man who killed his uncle. A man with shoulder-length blonde hair and a star tattooed on his wrist. And so he's going around town hunting down criminals who look like him, listening to police radio. He attacks this one guy who has all of his crew chase after Spider-Man. And it was in this scene where he's being chased by all those guys that I really noticed. For me, again, Spider-Man, he just easily kicks all their asses.
It's easy to kick lots of ass, but you could pick up a car.
Yeah, but he turned into Spider-Man like a week ago. You think that he wouldn't be able to necessarily run down a pitch black alleyway and then sequentially kick all their asses like a week into having his powers. Another thing that struck me is the first 2 acts of this film, I'm not a fan of how they're shot. Like, from a visual perspective. They're very dull, very dreary, very just basic. Like, this film has very little style, I think. Mark Webb has proven himself as a capable filmmaker. He's done films like Gifted and 500 Days of Summer. But it's just, this movie feels so corporate. It feels like it doesn't have a director's style to it to make it a clear, concise vision. It's just very dull and dreary and overdramatic. And I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses of the film as a whole, because the studio just had their claws wrapped tight around this movie.
And like the Sam Raimi trilogy, holy shit, they are cheesy. But they're good cheesy. They have a heart. They feel comic booky and creative and interesting.
Yeah, this movie just doesn't really have any of that. There are glimpses of it here and there, I admit it. It just, overall, like I said, just bland. And it sucks because it's Spider-Man, one of the most colorful and upbeat characters in comic books. Not to say that he hasn't had storylines and you can't take the character in a direction of being more serious and dramatic, but I'm just saying this is not a very good representation of the character of Peter Parker. And it's a better portrayal of Spider-Man, I do think, here and there, but still not great. I do think that this is one of the weaker interpretations of Spider-Man. After escaping the guy and his goons, turns out the guy that he pulled over in the alleyway, he's not the guy, doesn't have the star tattoo. He escapes them, but he falls in through the roof into a wrestling ring, and he sees, as the guy is screaming, "I know your face, I'm hunting you down," he sees a painting of a mask and decides he's going to create a masked vigilante identity, and cut to the montage of Peter Parker progressively making his mask, developing the suit to what eventually will be the Spider-Man suit, hunting down the criminals in an attempt to find the man that killed his uncle, and how he's getting the attention of the law, most notably Captain Stacy, played by Dennis Leary. And eventually we get the pretty interesting scene of him running along the rooftops and swinging onto the windows, where we get the final reveal of the Spider-Man suit.
Yeah, and I will say, we did say earlier this film doesn't have style and isn't visually interesting. Amendment to that, I think this film has very good web-slinging scenes.
Yeah.
Peter, like, swinging around and free-running on walls. It's where the film really shines.
Yes, absolutely. I do agree with that. Like I said, it's not all mediocre. There are glimpses of genuine attempts to make a great story and great film. Here, it's just overall, I think, the mediocre outweighs the great. But yeah, you're right. The swinging scenes are incredibly entertaining. However, the final reveal of the suit is not. I'm going to say this right now. I hate the suit in this movie. It looks like a wet basketball. It has yellow eyes. The head is weirdly shaped. It looks perpetually wet. Like, is my point.
The problem is it does not have yellow eyes. They're supposed to be yellow. In every single scene, they're black. Yeah. Thankfully, they fixed it in the second one. Like, I don't like...
the way they light...
I don't like sunglass eye Spider-Man. I like the classic white. Even them going yellow like they intended would have been better. They just... I don't know how they didn't pull it off. Because, I mean, a lot of the Spider-Man swinging is CG, but they're still black in those shots.
Yeah.
I don't know how they messed that up.
Yeah, the way they lit it is, like, so weird and dark, and it just... The suit looks like shit.
Also, the, like, first-person scene where he lands on the building and it, like, reflects him, which is a pretty cool shot. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the only Spider-Man, like, in-costume scene that happens a day? Oh, wait, no, there's him versus the lizard at the school. No. But yeah, it is a lot of Spider-Man at night, so it's dark, so his eyes look black.
Also, in the montage that we just talked about, Spider-Man creates his web shooters, which is another thing that they did differently from the Sam Raimi films, is in the Sam Raimi movies, he has organic webs that shoot out of his wrists. But in this film, they go the more comic accurate route and have him use the Oscorp Super Silk that he just has. We don't see...
He steals.
Yeah, but we don't see him stealing. We just...
Presumably.
Just has them now. But yeah, he makes the web shooters that he uses to swing around everywhere.
Yeah. Also, can I say something? A hot take in the Spider-Man fandom? I could not care less whether his web shooters are organic or mechanical. I don't care which one you think is more realistic or about comic accuracy. I really don't.
Yeah, neither do I.
Who gives a shit?
I mean, I am a fan of how they pulled it off in the Sam Raimi movies, but I agree with you. I don't really care either or, as long as it works. And if it works, it works.
While Spider-Man's out revenge-ing, we get a really nice scene where he stops a carjacker and just utterly mocks him. The famous, "Oh no, tiny knives" scene. It's a great scene. It's the best Spider-Man being quippy scene in any Spider-Man movie. And honestly, they kind of miss that in other scenes, which is a shame. Because in the carjacker scene, it's fantastic. It's probably the most film-accurate portrayal of Peter Parker as a character. Yeah. Not only that he's a snarky asshole, but also that it is, at least partially, a bit of a facade that he's doing it to mask his inner turmoil.
Yes.
And it doesn't show up in the other scenes. It's just the carjacking scene.
Yes.
Why? Why? If you went more into it, it would have been a really good movie.
Here's my problem with that scene. They only filmed that and included it in the movie to shut the fans up.
Yeah, probably.
Look at the entire movie. It's like a lot of people were upset that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man wasn't like the traditionally quippy, sarcastic, witty character. There were glimpses of it here and there, but he wasn't that character all throughout. And even in this movie, he's not that character all throughout. So they threw in this one scene where he's like completely quippy and sarcastic to just appease the fans and basically tell them to say, oh yeah, we'll just give them what they want to shut them up.
And I hate the fact that there are 7 Spider-Man movies and there is a single scene where Spider-Man acts like Spider-Man.
If you think about it, it's kind of insulting how they included this scene and why, and it just, I don't know. It's the only scene that makes Spider-Man out to be this particular character. It's out of place in the movie. He doesn't play that character throughout the rest of the movie. It's just there to be there for the fans. And from a filmmaking perspective, it's really cheap. But he stops the car thief, teases him, hits him in the nutsack with his webs. Turns out he's not the guy that killed Peter's uncle, so when the police show up, the police pull a gun on him. He disarms the police officer, and once all the other officers come out, Spider-Man swings away and escapes. Basically, Captain Stacy is starting to hunt down Spider-Man because he sees him as a vigilante.
He is a menace!
Menace!
You know, honestly, there isn't room in this film for it, but it is kind of sad that neither of these movies have a J. Jonah Jameson, especially in hindsight now that they're bringing J.K. Simmons back in the MCU.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, considering how crowded this, and especially the second one, are, probably for the best they aren't adding other characters.
After that scene, the guy who's played by Irfan Khan tells Dr. Connors that they need to start human trials of the lizard virus immediately because Norman Osborn is dying. And we hear that throughout the movie. Norman Osborn is dying. We don't see him. We never see him. He's just dying. Wink, wink. We'll do it in the sequel.
Yeah.
Irfan Khan shuts down Connors' entire lab and takes the vials of the vaccine to the Veterans Hospital, to which Connors injects himself with the lizard serum because, reasons.
I mean, are you a comic book scientist if you don't experiment on yourself?
Yeah, but he's a smart guy. Yes, he's ambitious and he's driven, but he's a smart scientist. He's not gonna just inject himself with a serum that might kill him. Oh yeah, I forgot. Peter and Gwen are dating this entire time.
Yeah.
Because they asked each other out, and that's the last time we saw them together. But now she invites him over to eat branzini with her family. Branzini is a type of fish. So Peter goes to Gwen's house by the fire escape and has a very awkward meeting with her dad, Captain Stacy, because here's this teenage boy in your 17-year-old daughter's room. He's just there, it's a little awkward. Cuts to Connors. His arm has grown back.
Yay!
Yeah, after injecting the lizard serum into his arm has now grown back, and he needs to stop Irfan Khan from injecting other people in the hospital with the serum, because that might have potential side effects. And as Peter Parker is having a very, very awkward dinner conversation about Spider-Man...
Oh god, it's so awkward! Because the topic of Spider-Man comes up, and Peter can't avoid going like, yeah, well, Spider-Man's cool. I'm trying to arrest Spider-Man. Yeah, but he's cool. Oh god, it's so awkward. Yeah. And again, he sucks at keeping a secret identity.
Yeah.
God, it's like every Batman parody, like Holy Musical Batman, the Lego Batman movie, College Humor Batman, they all do the same joke where Bruce Wayne or Batman say that each other is cool. Like, who's Bruce Wayne? I don't know any Bruce Wayne, but I bet he's handsome. Yeah, that's basically this movie, but unironically. God damn it, Peter. Secret identities aren't hard, you're just dumb.
Yeah, so as Spider-Man is having this really awkward conversation about trying to justify his, or at least Spider-Man's actions to Captain Stacy, Connors is getting a taxi trying to catch up to Irfan Khan, and he slowly starts to transform into a giant lizard monster. After the dinner, Peter and Stacy go out to the porch. Peter, for some reason, tells Gwen that he's Spider-Man. Even though they tell us they've been dating this entire time, that we haven't seen any of that. I drew a lot of comparisons from this to Superman the movie, but at least in Superman the movie, it was established there was a bit of a relationship there. This movie, it's just like two young people who like each other, and we're told they really like each other, but we don't see it, so we don't believe it. It's just, he tells her his secret identity and he grabs her ass with his webs, spins her around, and then starts making out with her. It's just nonsensical and kind of creepy on Peter's part. The lizard breaks out of the taxi and starts attacking cars on the bridge. The police and Spider-Man come to stop him. Peter and the lizard don't exactly have a fight. Peter just kind of kicks him to the ground and starts saving people in the cars, which leads to a pretty cool scene where he saves this kid named Jack from a car that's about to fall and burst into flames and stuff like that. It's pretty inspirational.
Yeah, like I've mentioned before, I love when superhero movies do this, and I wish it happened more, where we see superheroes saving people and being heroes. And I said that there were like 3 or 4 good scenes in this movie. This is another one of them. Just Spider-Man, like the first time in the movie, he's really being a hero, like saving this child from this car about to fall off the bridge. And you know, actually, he chooses between saving the child and going after the lizard, and he chooses to be a hero and save people because it's Spider-Man. And that's like when he finally becomes Spider-Man and starts being a hero. And it's a really good scene.
I agree with you. That was a very good scene. The lizard escapes before he's able to kill Irfan, and then Irfan Khan just never comes back into the movie. He's just disappears. He's gone. So that's a subplot that goes away and never comes back. Add that to the list.
Yay. This'll be back in the sequel. And, you know, we criticized this film a lot for just trying to do this massive myth arc and, like, setting up so many things, which is also a thing that the second one does. But, you know, I mean, it pays off. Like, the 7-part Spider-Man series that really becomes good around the 4th one once they've got everything established and are just finally telling good Spider-Man stories. You know, all of the setup in the beginning paid off.
Of course. You kind of had me there for a second, I'm going to be honest with you. But Peter meets with Gwen Stacy, telling her that he has to go after the lizard. He meets with Doc Connors, who immediately Peter deduces that this guy's the lizard. Like, it's not even subtle. He's saying, lizard, there's a rumor of a new species of lizard in New York, and it's quite dangerous. And Peter's like, okay, yep, he's a lizard. And then, after Connors leaves, just to further shove it in Peter's and our faces that this guy is the lizard, it shows Freddy, the rat they experimented on with the lizard serum. He's transformed into a giant rat and eating Wilma. Now, what happened to Freddy after that scene? It just sort of ends. We don't know what happened. We don't know what Peter did. You know Peter got attacked by that giant lizard rat. Release the Freddy cut. That's what I say.
Yeah. Hey, Riley, you like to make art and films and writing and stuff. Do you ever make something really original and then see a movie you haven't seen in like 5 years and then realize that you stole a scene from it, like whole cloth without even meaning to?
I have not yet. I'm sure I have.
Yeah, me neither. But anyway, Peter decides to hunt down the lizard. He's hanging out the sewers. Peter goes down there. And actually, it's a really cool thing they do where, like, he spreads spreads out a web in the middle of this like big sewer cross section. I don't know words. And like builds a web there so he can like feel the vibrations and detect the lizard. That's a little nice thing.
Yeah. It was very interesting. And as he's like shooting the webs and attaching them together, visually it's very interesting. His body is moving very contortionally. Again, that entire scene, his eyes are so dark and shadowy. It's weird, but yeah, Peter is sitting on the web waiting for Lizard to show up when a bunch of lizards come out and start walking down this one corridor where Spider-Man is ambushed by the lizard. And as the two are fighting, the lizard scratches Spider-Man's chest and sets off the camera, which Peter rigged to the web. And that actually does lead to a pretty terrifying fight. Like, when they fall into the water and Peter's swimming away, and then you see the lizard just swimming towards him, gaining on him so quickly, that's terrifying. Like, that image is terrifying to me. That would, like, be my hell on earth.
Yeah, and like Spider-Man gets a massive slash across his chest, and then like I think it's the next scene he like goes to Gwen injured, and like he takes off his costume, and there's just this massive wound. Like, oh, that's brutal.
Yeah, so Peter just barely escapes the lizard. He makes his way to Gwen Stacy's room where she stitches him up, and they have a really overdrawn and unfunny, humorous scene where she's trying to keep her dad out of her room by convincing him that she's having menstruation cramps, and it's just weird and bizarre and cringy. Peter takes Gwen swinging around the city. The lizard finds the camera that Peter set up and sees on a piece of tape on the back of the camera is Peter Parker's name written on it. So now the lizard obviously knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker.
Secret identities are hard, okay, Riley? Why are you being mean to Spider-Man?
Because he should do
saved
better.
New York.
He should know better. The next day, the lizard attacks Midtown High, Spider-Man's high school, by climbing in through the toilets. I did like the fight the two had, especially that part where they're in the hallway. Spider-Man webs the lizard's hand to a locker door, and then the lizard rips the locker off the hinges, and now it's like a blade, and he goes, oh boy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Also, like, Spider-Man at one point, like, just jukes around Lizard and, like, webs him up like a spider would. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it also had a really great Stan Lee cameo.
I think this film might have the best Stan Lee cameo.
Better than Deadpool?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why does Deadpool even have a Stan Lee cameo? Deadpool was created by Rob Liefeld.
Because Rob Liefeld already had a cameo in the movie.
He did?
Yeah, on the highway, when he's talking to Colossus, if you look on the highway signs, the words Liefeld Road appear on one of them.
Well, okay. Also, his name's on one of the coffee cups, and in the sequel, they say that Domino was created by a guy who can't draw feet.
Yeah, but we're getting off topic.
Deadpool 2 is a good movie.
Yeah, it is. Spider-Man fights the lizard in a pretty cool scene. Again, like I said, at this point, the entire school will probably figure out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. The lizard escapes, having failed at his attempt to kill Spider-Man. Spider-Man follows him down to the sewers where he finds his lair, and on a phone call with Gwen Stacy, he tells her to go to Oscorp to make an antidote for the lizard serum to cure Doc Connors. And then after that, Spider-Man finds Doc Connors' sewer lair where there's literally tables upon tables of exposition explaining what has been going on with Doc Connors, including a video for Spider-Man just on the computer screen that's booted up already for him to just press play, and he will have his entire plan told to him by a recording of Doc Connors. So much exposition.
We have a bad scene.
Also, Doc Connors' plan. Where the fuck did any of that motivation come from? His plan is he wants to use that disease dispensing device to dispense the lizard serum all over New York because he can.
He can end weakness. I guess that's his motivation now.
And that's another huge problem I have with this. I understand that there's going to be creative license taken, especially when it comes to adaptation. But the lizard is supposed to be a sympathetic villain to Spider-Man. He's supposed to be a guy whose drive, ambition, and arrogance led to him becoming this monster and hurting people. And Spider-Man has a personal relationship with him and has to save Doc Connors from himself, save the man who's truly behind the lizard. Now, I understand that they might have, yes, probably changed some stuff in order to adapt the story, but even this story lends itself very well to that angle. Like, Doc Connors is the last remnant Peter Parker has with his parents, and he completely forgets about that after the first scene they meet. Like, the reason why Peter Parker helps Doc Connors create the lizard serum in the first place is because he wants to get to know him better, because he's that connection to his parents as they set up in the beginning of the film. However, after that first scene where they meet, that never comes up ever again. It's just they're working together because reasons.
Science!
Yeah, because science.
Yeah,
And
I don't know.
at no point does the fact that he's essentially a father figure to him ever really play into it. He's just kind of like, oh, they established this guy and they established a vague personal connection to Peter Parker, but there's no sympathy from him. He's just a deranged scientist who, of his own free will, is turning himself into this monster.
And I mean, they kind of portray it as, ooh, the lizard DNA is making him go insane and be evil. Yeah, I'd figure lizard DNA would make him be animalistic and try and, like, smash it, not want to turn Manhattan into a bunch of lizard people using Richard Parker's cool war crime machine.
When Doc Connors turns into the lizard, at no point is Peter, like, guilt-stricken with the fact that he's like, oh, the man that is the only connection to my parents is this thing, this monster. He's just kind of like, oh yeah, he's kind of my friend, so I'll help him. But mostly I have to stop him from turning all of New York into lizard people. Also with Gwen Stacy, it's like at no point they say in the movie, it's like, oh yeah, Doc Connors is her mentor. He wrote this glowing letter of recommendation for her to go to college. And they say that, but at no point does Gwen even sit back and say, my mentor is a supervillain. It's just weak writing. The lizard is a terribly developed character. He from the beginning of the film, you could tell he was deranged. They were just waiting for something to set him off. And being turned into a giant lizard was. So it's like bad characterization on the lizard part, poor development on the lizard and Gwen Stacy. The characters' motivations don't make sense in this film. That was something that struck me upon rewatching it yesterday for this episode. It's just, why does the lizard want to do what he's doing? Like, why does Peter want to help him? What's Gwen's whole role besides she's smart and she can make a lizard serum antidote in 8 minutes?
Yeah.
Like, the characters' motivations, they're not there. Really, they're just not there.
Yeah, I will say the lizard is, I was going to say the weakest part of this movie, but not even close. Oh boy, this film has so many weak parts. And it's no fault of Rhys Ifans. He does the best he can. He's a good actor. It's just the character's mediocrely written.
Yeah.
I would dare say that the lizard is probably the worst live-action Spider-Man villain.
I would completely agree with that. Yeah, it's just, from a visual perspective, he is really cool. Like, as the film goes on, he progressively gets larger and larger, and he gets less human. Like, towards the end, this kind of jumping a little ahead, but when Captain Stacy is shooting him with the shotgun and he shoots the fingers off his hand, before he shot the fingers off his hand, he had 4 fingers. But then, because of his regeneration, it grows back, and 3 fingers grow back. So he's becoming more and more like a lizard. So really nice Easter egg. And his powers are super cool. How when he gets shot with a gun, he can, like, heal automatically. From a visual perspective, the lizard is a terrifying looking. It's just, his motivations make no sense. His involvement in the story is poorly executed. His story is terribly developed. It just doesn't make any sense. And like I said, this story lends itself to going the sympathetic route. It just doesn't, because that's too complex.
Oh god, we are tearing into this film like no other.
Yeah, well, I have a lot to say.
After the exposition dump, it's an exposition dump. Lizards go into Oscorp Tower to do the war crimes and turn everyone into lizard people. Scalies, I believe, is the proper term.
Yeah. Before he does that, he walks out of the sewers and just the police are there waiting for him. And, like, how did they find him? Where did they know to look for him? I don't know. They're just there. And they shoot him with guns, and the lizard wakes up, and he dispenses the lizard serum in actually a really cool shot, too. Like, I will say, I know I mentioned earlier, the first 2 acts aren't shot very well. Like, they're just not interesting. The third act, from a visual perspective, I was very impressed by. Like the shot where Lizard is dispensing the canisters into the 15 or so police officers and turning them into lizards. Like, that was really well shot. And even throughout the rest of the movie, from a visual perspective, it picked up a lot.
Also, Lizard turns a bunch of cops into scalies. That doesn't go anywhere.
Not at all. No, that's dropped.
But that's the thing he did.
Yep.
Anyway, Spider-Man's going to stop the lizard. Runs into the police. He gets unmasked by Captain Stacy, and he, explains, your daughter is in danger. And Captain Stacy lets him go. And then some dumbass cop shoots Spider-Man in the leg.
Yeah.
That fucking guy. Hope he got fired.
After that, the lizard breaks into Oscorp, where Gwen is making the antidote. He breaks in, steals the disease-dispensing device, and he carries it to the roof and starts setting it up, where he's going to release the toxin into New York City and turn everyone into lizards. Meanwhile, Spider-Man is struggling to get to Oscorp. He's hurt and injured over the last several hours of just being shot, cut, stabbed, beat up. As he's struggling, the father of the kid that he rescued on the bridge earlier, he notices that Spider-Man has helped. The man works in construction, and he calls in all the favors he can, tells all the people that are operating cranes on that street to turn them into the street where Spider-Man can use them to swing to Oscorp much quicker.
Yeah, and that, from a logistics and a realism point, is completely absurd, and it's just kind of this weird, cheesy scene.
Yeah.
And I fucking love it. I really like the people Spider-Man saves wanting to help him out later because he's a good person. Like they did it in the Sam Raimi movies with the New Yorkers chucking shit at the Green Goblin and standing in front of Doc Ock on the train. And I don't know what about this scene. I think it's how it's shot, just like the helicopter spotlight, running down the path. And then you see Spider-Man start to run and he's stumbling and he puts webbing over his gunshot wound and he jumps off the roof and he falls and then he rises back up on a crane and we get some great web swinging as he just goes from crane to crane and the music's great and it's just a really good scene and I get goosebumps every time I watch it. Honestly, I've been saying throughout this review that I like Spider-Man. I like The Amazing Spider-Man. It's not a bad movie. This is a bad movie. It's a really bad movie. But it has 4 of the best scenes in any superhero movie I've ever seen. And the crane scene is one of them. So I can't hate this film because every once in a while it does something really, really good.
Yeah, here's what I'll say about that scene. I would be lying if I said watching that scene, watching those people help him and he's swinging with the help of the cranes. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't inspired by that. However, I will say this. In comparison to that scene, as you mentioned, in the first Spider-Man where all the people are throwing all the crap at Green Goblin, what differentiates that scene from this scene is, in this movie, the people of New York haven't been established as characters enough to the point where they can decide whether they like or dislike Spider-Man. The police are established as a character and they are against Spider-Man, but not the people of New York necessarily. So, yes, it is very inspirational to see a guy who Spider-Man saved his kid help him out, but up until that point, they had not established the people of New York City as characters who were against Spider-Man, who are now supporting him as such. So for me, it doesn't carry in the long run. It's very inspirational to watch, but in the long run, it doesn't carry much weight.
Anyway, Spider-Man gets to the tower. And again, the scene is really good, but logistically it makes no sense. Like, Captain Stacy gets there basically the same time as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And also, it took the Lizard, like, a week to get there. How long is this distance? It's not far.
No.
But whatever.
But here's what I will say. One of the dumbest, most convenient parts of this scene is how Gwen Stacy, she created the antidote. She was up there in the tower. She could have gone up there to say, hey, Peter, take this. No, she went all the way back down, told her father to go all the way back to the roof to give him the antidote. Like, what?
I mean, to be fair, in Gwen's defense, she didn't know Peter was up there. Also, you gotta go after the Lizard after he doesn't eat you? Like, I'm fine with Gwen running away. Lizard could wreck her.
Oh yeah, Lizard could. I'm just saying, it's so convenient that Captain Stacy, her dad was there and not her.
And how did he get there? He got there as quick as Spider-Man, and I guess it's because he drove, but this is Manhattan. It should have taken him an hour to go those 3 blocks.
Nope, he gets there really quickly.
Final confrontation on the roof. Spider-Man fights the Lizard and, uses random liquid nitrogen tubes on the roof that are there. For some reason, I don't know why, to freeze the Lizard, and they fight. Lizard does kick Spider-Man's ass, though, and pull off his mask, because it wouldn't be a live-action Spider-Man movie without Peter randomly getting unmasked in the final battle.
Nope.
They do that way too much. Ugh. And then Captain Stacy shows up, and he shoots at the Lizard and, saves Spider-Man, and holds him off while Spider-Man goes to change the canisters. And he gets killed. Because, Lizard. And Lizard, tries to stop Spider-Man and, tears down the radio tower. They're launching the machine that should not exist. I am not over. What? Who made this? Oh, God.
You know something? That device is so dumb, and this climax makes no sense, but someone liked it so much that they wrote it into the finale of the 2014 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle reboot.
Oh, good.
That movie ends beat for beat exactly like this movie. Even down to the villain's plot. They're gonna dispense a disease into the city, and it's so stupid.
Gotta say, plus for this film, this is only the second worst movie with that plot.
Yeah. The second worst movie in the span of 2 years. Peter's about to fall off the roof. He could, use his sticky powers to get to the roof, but no, for some reason, those powers just aren't working right now. So Doc Connors has to save Peter.
And I don't think that the Lizard is well written enough for it to really work as well as it could. No. But in theory, I do like that as he regains his humanity, stops Peter from falling.
And I do like that he saves him with the arm that is disintegrating. And then he has to switch over to his other hand. Peter goes over to Captain Stacy, who dies in his arms, and tells him to leave Gwen out of his life because he's going to create enemies and he's going to get Gwen into trouble. They host Captain Stacy's funeral. Peter leaves Gwen alone like her dad asked. Then a day later, they get back together. And then that's the end of the movie.
No. You are vastly oversimplifying. It isn't they get back together after a day. It's the worst goddamn scene in the movie. He promises Gwen Stacy's dying father that he'll stay away from her so she doesn't get hurt. And then at the end of the movie, he, gets into a conversation with the teacher, a really clumsy conversation where she's like, don't make promises you can't keep. And he whispers into Gwen Stacy's ear, those are the best kinds of promises. Hey, Peter? Hey, Peter? Buddy? Hey, Peter? Hey, Peter? What the fuck, Peter? What? Dude, he saved your life and died in your arms, and you promised not to date his daughter. What the shit, Peter? How did they get that wrong? The defining Spider-Man character trait, it is not him being a nerd. It is not him making jokes. It is him being constantly clouded by guilt and hating himself because he blames himself for the deaths of his loved ones. What the shit? I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
That ending is enough that it lowered this movie's score by a whole half point.
And then, you know what else lowers it? Is the mid-credit scene that sets up the Sinister Six movie. Can't wait for that to come out, right?
Ah, yeah. Oh boy.
And yeah, that's The Amazing Spider-Man.
This movie isn't as good as I remembered. I haven't seen the Sam Raimi movies in years, though, so I don't know how good they are.
Yeah.
And I'm always kind of like, it's alright towards Tom Holland.
In terms of my overall thoughts on the movie, as I've mentioned before, this movie, if I could sum this up in one word, it's just mediocre. And a second word would be bland. It's very dull, very dreary, very overdramatic without much reason to be. It has no style to it. It's just very corporate. And you know that's because the studio just had their claws all over it. The characters are misrepresented. A lot of talented actors are wasted. It jumps around in tone. It'll be this very dark, dreary, serious tone, and then it'll cut to this awkward humor, and then it'll be like slapstick humor, and then it'll cut to be this super cheesy, overdramatic scenes. And I don't know. It's not horrible. It's not bad. And I don't hate this movie. It's just, I don't ever really see myself watching it again.
Yeah.
I do think the film progressively does get more entertaining as it goes on. That said, as it goes on, it gets dumber. Like, the first two acts don't visually, from a cinematography perspective, aren't very remarkable. The third act has a lot of really incredible shots, but the third act just makes no sense. The story just doesn't have much to do with it. It's not very well written. The first half, as I mentioned, is just kind of going through the motions. Like, okay, here's another telling of the origin of Spider-Man. The suit does not work at all. The suit looks like a wet basketball. The way they shot it is terrible. There's a lot of moments of comedy that don't work. There's a few moments that do. They're pretty clever, but overall, a lot of the comedy is like awkward and drawn out. The characters are misrepresented. Half of them are not developed at all. This is a terrible version of Peter Parker. Gwen Stacy receives no character development. Aunt May is barely in the movie. Kurt Connors is the worst character in this movie. Like, as much as I do think the Lizard's presence on screen is intimidating, it just isn't enough to save just such a poorly written character. I think the only really good character in this movie is Uncle Ben, and they kill him off like a third into the movie. There's a lot of subplots that are just dropped. Most likely in the vein of setting up sequels, but again, when you have to make a movie, you can't be worried about the movie you're going to make next. You have to worry about the movie you're going to make now. And how is this movie? There's so many subplots that are brought up and then dropped. Like Peter Parker's parents. Once he meets up with Dr. Connors and they have that first meeting, they're never brought up again. Or hardly ever, if ever. Irfan Khan, he's an incredible actor, very mysterious character. He just vanishes after the Lizard fails at killing him. He's just never there. Norman Osborn is sick. That never comes to play ever. The Lizard's motivations just don't make sense. Gwen Stacy has no development. Peter Parker is terribly characterized. It's just, there's a lot of exposition, and it ends on the worst possible scene. Like we talked about today, there are a few moments in here, a few really solid scenes that are arguably some of the best live-action Spider-Man scenes ever. It's just, they all take place in a movie that is the epitome of bland, mediocre, overly dramatic, and tonally inconsistent. For that reason, I really don't see myself watching this movie ever again.
Holy shit, you fucking killed him, dude. My thoughts on this film are much the same as Riley's. The thing about this film is that when it shines, it shines. It is great. And when it fails, oh god, does it fail. And the thing is, 90% of the time it fails. I really, really want to like this movie. I do think that Spider-Man fans are too hard on this movie and that there's a lot of genuinely good things about this movie. But I don't think it's a great film by any means.
Yeah.
At least it's not Amazing Spider-Man 2!
Oh no. That movie is just trash from beginning to end.
Oh god, I have so many thoughts on that film.
We need to cover that soon. We need to cover that someday.
Someday. I have so many things to say about that film.
Yeah. Alright, so we've been going for a little while. I'd say let's get into scores.
Yeah, this is right now our longest episode yet.
Yeah.
We had a lot to say.
Yeah.
Riley, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate The Amazing Spider-Man?
As I mentioned, this movie is just kind of mediocre. I do feel like it gets a lot worse of a rap than it deserves. Like, it's just kind of memeable to talk about how shitty this movie is. It's not shit, it's just the most average, forgettable movie ever, with a couple of really solid moments. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10.
I am going to give it a very generous 8.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And what it is not good, per se, but it's a film that has some good parts.
Yeah.
This is, looking over our scores, this movie, according to us, is worse than Sonic the Hedgehog. And it's only slightly better than Death Note.
Yeah, I believe that.
It's no Captain America 1990, though.
Not at all. Not at all.
But anyway, I think that's going to do it for this episode. We're not going to talk much longer because I have to edit this, and editing takes time.
Yeah.
Oh god, why do we ramble so much and go down side notes? Like today I was doing some editing for the Batman Returns, and we talked about like Nosferatu for like 5 minutes. Why?
I don't know. It's just fun.
Riley, where can they find you?
You can all find me on YouTube at Riley Thorpe, where you can check out all my latest short films and video essays. You can find me also on TikTok and Instagram at Riley James Thorpe, where I have a lot of funny, humorous content there. You can find me on Facebook at Riley Thorpe. And you can find me on Twitter at RileyThorpe7.
You can find me on Twitter at JarmesCasey, JarmesCasey. I post some of my short stories there. Check them out, and maybe if you like them, buy one of my short story collections. I have bills. College is expensive. We'll be back next week, assuming we don't accidentally reveal our secret identity and then get murdered by a big spooky lizard dude.
Yay.
Next episode, we're doing a discussion. Remember when we did discussions? We're doing one again. And it's going to be a nice Christmas episode because we're going to be talking about one of the best comic book characters ever, Santa Claus, who is a character in both Marvel and DC. And oh boy. The title I think I'm going to do for next week's episode is Santa Claus is an Omega level mutant.
Yeah, that
which is a true thing in Marvel Comics.
Yeah.
As always, I'm Casey Jarms.
And I'm Riley Thorpe.
And hey, it's just a movie. Don't lose your head about it, especially not to a letter.